revolutionaries in other parts of the world. In Canada, a national emergency was declared when revolutionary separatists from Quebec kidnapped Labour Minister Pierre and threatened to kill him if the government didn't release a number of their imprisoned colleagues. The government's show of strength failed to prevent tragedy. After a week of agonized waiting, Monsieur Laporte's body was found by police. Shocked Canadians queued up to pay their last respects. Even here, security was strict. Paradoxically, the separatists' action appeared to strengthen national unity rather than weaken it. In the United States, President Nixon faced a whole host of problems both at home and abroad. On the domestic front, the task of coping with inflation and other economic ills was made all the more difficult by the need to woo the electorate for the mid-term congressional elections. The president threw himself into the campaign with unprecedented fervor, but failed to achieve his goal of a Republican-dominated Congress. In matters of foreign policy, America continued to be preoccupied with Southeast Asia. More talks were held in Paris with the North Vietnamese, but the dialogue was hardly meaningful. It appeared as if the only thing each side was prepared to accept was the virtual surrender of the other. In Vietnam itself, 1970 saw the continuation of the American troop withdrawal and an increasingly important role being assigned to South Vietnam's own army. In contrast to earlier attempts at Vietnamization, the policy appeared to be working well, but there seemed little likelihood of the Americans being able to withdraw completely. It looked as if American training, arms, and above all air power would be needed for a long time to come. In neighboring Cambodia, a coup d'etat toppled head of state Prince Norodom Sihanouk. The coup came in March when Sihanouk was on a trip to Moscow. He later went to Hanoi and eventually Peking. As a ruler, he'd been a determined, if somewhat eccentric, advocate of neutrality, which for him did not exclude cooperation with the communists, provided they didn't interfere in Cambodia's internal affairs. Sihanouk's place was taken by General Lon Nol, a former vice president. Massive rallies were held vilifying Sihanouk as, among other things, a Viet Cong collaborator. Before the year's end, the former head of state had been sentenced to death in absentia, and Cambodia had become a republic. Within 2 months of Sihanouk's downfall, Cambodia lost all pretense of neutrality. At the end of April, American and South Vietnamese forces brought the fight against the Viet Cong onto Cambodian soil. It was not, insisted President Nixon, an invasion. The troops had been requested by General Lon Nol, and they would in any case be withdrawn within 2 months. The principal aim was to locate the headquarters from which the Viet Cong directed their operation in Vietnam. This was never found, but the Americans declared themselves well pleased with captured arms dumps. True to their promise, the Americans withdrew, which relieved those who'd feared yet another Vietnamese-style involvement, but it put a heavy burden on the young and largely inexperienced Cambodian army. After an uncertain beginning, the Cambodians fought well, although as the year ended, nearly a third of their national territory was under communist control.